All right, so today we're diving into something kind of wild, simulation.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I'm sure some of our listeners are already thinking this, we're not talking about, like, are we living in a computer program? This is different.
Yeah.
We're talking about how our brains, our own minds, build the reality that we experience.
It's a fascinating area. Philosophically speaking, we're not really trying to definitively answer the question, are we in the Matrix? It's really more about how much of what we think of as real is actually a product of our own minds. How much are our brains shaping that reality?
So to help us unpack this, we asked YouTuber Jason Statham for his take, and he jumps right in, makes this really bold claim. He says we're already living in a matrix.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. It's one that we built ourselves. And he uses this really thought-provoking example, something as simple as like seeing a tree.
Yeah.
We see a tree, we don't even think about it, right?
Take it for granted.
Totally. But he points out what we're actually seeing is our brains interpreting these photons from the sun bouncing off of, well, a tree.
It's our senses giving us information and our brain constructing a model based on what it's receiving. So we're never actually directly experiencing reality, but rather our experience of reality is filtered through our senses.
So it's like our brains are creating this simulation, this kind of like shared operating system almost that we're all tapping into.
Yeah. And it's really interesting.
What's that?
This YouTuber, Jason, he used this great example of car spoilers.
Okay.
The things on the back of some cars.
Yeah.
They don't actually always make the car go faster.
Right.
But they sure as heck make it look faster.
Oh, 100%. I've totally fallen for that. You see that spoiler, you're like, whoa. That car means business, even if it's, just a Honda Civic or something.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Even when we know it's potentially, a trick, we still react to it.
So why do we fall for it?
Well, he gets into this concept of signifiers.
Signifiers.
Yeah, it's like a symbol, right? It represents something else. So like the spoiler signifies speed, right? Performance, even if it's not actually there.
Ah, okay.
And it becomes kind of like a shared understanding, this shorthand that shapes how we perceive something.
So you're saying, like, just by seeing a spoiler, we're kind of buying into this mini simulation, this, like, shared agreement that, okay, that shape means fast car.
Yeah, precisely. And it's not just cars, right? Think about, like, brands. Even Jason uses this example. He's like, even something like McDonald's is delicious. Like, that's not... that wasn't just always there.
Right. It's not like babies are born craving a Big Mac.
Exactly.
They have to learn to associate those golden arches with like a certain taste, a certain feeling.
It's part of this matrix idea, right? It's not some external force, but it's something that we've built and we continue to build through, our shared ideas, beliefs, experiences.
Okay, so how does this whole collective consciousness thing play into this?
Right.
Because it kind of sounds like you're saying we're all like plugged into some giant hive mind.
Well, not necessarily a hive mind, but you're on the right track.
Okay.
It's almost like we inherit like a set of rules for a game we didn't even know we were playing, right?
Yeah.
And those rules are like the cultural norms, the values, even like historical narratives. They shape how we see and interact with the world.
And we're constantly updating those rules with each generation, too, right? Like bell bottoms were cool in the 70s, then they weren't. Now, who knows? They might be back.
Yeah, exactly. So we inherit this framework, but then we also contribute to it. And that's what I think is so fascinating about this whole idea of like a self-constructed matrix. It's not static, it's this constantly shifting landscape shaped by, our collective experiences and interpretations.
This is really making my head spin, but in a good way. So, okay, if we're the ones creating this matrix, does that mean we can change it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
But I think if we acknowledge that we're not just like passively receiving reality, but we're actively participating in shaping it,
right,
then, yeah, I think we have the potential to change it.
Okay, but how? Where do we even start? It's not like there's a reset button on like our collective reality.
You're right. There's no easy button. But I think it starts with awareness, like recognizing the filters through which we're experiencing the world. And once you see the code, so to speak, of the matrix, then you can start to question it. You can challenge it. You can even rewrite parts of it.
So instead of just accepting that, like, okay, spoiler equals fast car, we start to ask ourselves, like, why do I believe that? Is that even true? Do I even care?
Exactly. It's about becoming conscious of the assumptions and biases that shape how we perceive things. And then deciding, like, do we want to keep operating within those frameworks? Or do we want to create something new?
Okay, so we've kind of established this matrix idea, right? It's real, we're building it, we can maybe even change it.
Right.
But where does this whole simulacrum thing that Jason mentioned fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's where things get really meta.
Yep.
Because remember, he ended by saying, go read Baudrillard. And I know, diving into French philosophy is not everyone's cup of tea.
Right.
But Baudrillard's concept of simulacrum, I think, is really crucial here.
Okay, so in plain English, what is a simulacrum?
All right. Think of it like this. Imagine a picture of a pipe. It's not a real pipe, right?
Yeah.
It's a representation.
A copy?
It's a copy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a simulacrum goes a step further. It's a copy that becomes so detached from the original that it starts to replace it in our minds. It becomes like more real than real.
Whoa, okay, so it's not just a copy, it's like a copy that becomes the new reality.
Exactly. And you see this everywhere. I mean, think about like reality TV, right?
Yeah.
It's a constructed, exaggerated version of reality.
Right.
And yet it influences how we view like relationships, success, even ourselves in the real world.
It's true. It's like we start comparing our lives to these totally manufactured narratives and then feeling inadequate when we don't measure up.
Yeah, and that's what's so mind-bending about applying this concept to the Matrix, right? Because if our shared reality is a construct and it's built on these simulacra, these copies without originals, then how do we even begin to untangle what's real and what's not?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like if our brains are constantly interpreting, filtering information, creating this simulated reality, do we ever actually experience anything directly? Or are we always like one step removed?
That is the big philosophical question.
Right.
But, I think the thing is recognizing the power of these simulacra, these constructed realities, it doesn't mean we have to like give up on finding meaning or authenticity.
So it's not about escaping the matrix. It's more about like learning to navigate it with this new awareness.
Exactly. I think it's about being aware of the influences that are shaping how we see things, questioning those influences, and then ultimately choosing how we engage with this shared reality that we're all creating.
So it's less about becoming like cynical and more about becoming discerning.
I like that. Discerning. Becoming more discerning consumers of information, more critical thinkers, more conscious creators of our own experience. It's about recognizing that, yeah, the matrix might be powerful, but it doesn't have to dictate our lives. We still have agency.
That's actually pretty empowering.
Yeah.
It's like we're not just along for the ride, we're actually kind of co-piloting this thing.
Absolutely.
Wow, this has been quite the deep dive.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm looking at everything a little differently now.
I hear that.
From, car spoilers to reality TV.
Right.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's also pretty exciting when you really consider the possibilities.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. It's not about having all the answers, but it's about staying curious, asking questions, or just remembering that we all have a role to play in shaping this reality that we experience.